When it comes to the Ontario provincial election, it's our next guest's job to make sure everything is shipshape. But as voter turnout is in free fall and technology advances, it's also his job to tend to any leaks that have sprung. So tonight we welcome back to TVO Greg Essensa. He's the Chief Electoral Officer for the province of Ontario, and it's nice to have you here again.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay, this campaign is 21 days, technically, I guess, since the writs were drawn up, 21 days old. But for you, planning for this starts when?
Well, the actual planning for the event for us started in October of 2011. Immediately after the event, first thing I did was reorder the ballot paper, the 10 million sheets of ballot paper. After that, we went to meet with who we considered the resident experts on minority government. Elections Canada had conducted 4 elections in 8 years. Elections Quebec had been in minority for some time. So we met with those agencies. We learned about how they prepared, how they planned.
Why would it be any different if it's a minority versus majority?
Well, for us, this was the first time in Ontario we'd been in minority in 25 years. So the ability to be able to open our doors immediately on an unfixed date is a real challenge. It's a challenge for the returning officers. It's a challenge for headquarters. Returning officers have to have a constant state of available returning offices that they can lease in a moment's notice. They need to know where their key staff are. At headquarters, we need to be able to ship out over 600 metric tons of materials within 48 hours.
So 2.5 years in the making, but in some respects, did you know when Andrea Horwath, the day after the budget, went to have a press conference saying she was pulling the plug? Did you know that was going to happen?
I did not.
Do you have a sense it was going to happen?
I was at the budget on May the 1st, so I spoke with a number of people who were there. I had a sense that there was a real possibility, but like everyone else, I watched the next morning her press conference. You know, 5 minutes after the press conference began, I was quite clear that her intentions were well known. I actually walked out into the main hall of our offices to announce to the staff that, in fact, we were going to be having an election, and smoke was billowing out of our kitchen. So I saw immediately 150 people running to the doors. Fortunately, the fire was maintained right in the kitchen. The fire trucks were there within 5 minutes. But reality was, there was a moment there where my heart was in my throat thinking I'd have to call the LG, and I'm not sure what I would have said. So
you would have said, Habemus Papa. No, different, white smoke and so on. Okay, let's look at the team that you've got here, and we'll bring up this graphic just to show everybody here, because you are sitting on top of an organization that employs 70,000 people on Election Day at 25,000 different polls in 8,100 locations, and the cost of running this Ontario election is $90 million. Okay, we're 2 weeks to go now, right? E-Day is 14 days away.
Right.
What do you actually do now?
Well, right now it's really to ensure that both the returning officers in the field in the 107 ridings and at headquarters, that we have done everything possible to ensure that the election is conducted in accordance with both the Election Act and the Election Finances Act. So that means things like ensuring that all of the returning officers have adequate staff, that those staff have been trained. We've just finished the nomination process, so all the ballots have been printed. And they're being distributed to the deputy returning officers. This Saturday, we begin advanced polls. We have over 800 advanced polls that will be conducted over the 7 days. And then obviously on Election Day, as your graph indicates, we have 25,000 polls in over 8,100 locations.
Okay, you're not going to be surprised to hear that knowing you were coming today, I got some emails from some people who said, and this isn't a surprise when you're dealing with 70,000 people, they don't feel up to scratch. They don't feel like they're ready to go. They're people who are involved in the process, will be working for Elections Ontario on Election Day, and they don't feel they're trained and ready to go. Is that unusual?
I don't think it's unusual. I think the challenge that we've had is, you know, over time, I was recently speaking at an event where I went back and I looked at what our training programs. In 1950, when we would train electoral workers to work, our training program was 20 minutes. Now, our training program is 2.5 hours. Because of, over time, legislators have added a whole number of provisions to deal with a whack of individuals who face barriers to voting, but it's made the process a little bit more complex. Certainly, there's also the challenge of the fact that we have overlapping jurisdictions between municipal elections, federal elections, and provincial elections, and all of those rules aren't completely harmonized. So therefore, there's some idiosyncrasy, some differences.
Confusion.
A little bit of confusion. Yeah. But our job is really to ensure that those Election Day workers, they understand the rules, they understand exactly where they can get the relevant information that they need to be able to process the 9.2 million electors in accordance with our laws here in Ontario.
9.2 million electors who can vote. Okay, we know they don't all vote, and that's my next thing here. This is going to depress the hell out of you, but we're going to do this anyway. Well, these are your numbers from after the 2007 election. 97% of voters and 90% of non-voters said they specifically recalled seeing, reading, or hearing non-political election advertising or information through at least one of the 6 main vehicles used by Elections Ontario. And there they are, TV, radio, and so on. The vast majority of voters, that's 99%, and non-voters, 91% alike, continue to share a fundamental belief that it is important that people vote. And yet, you know what I'm going to show you next. Let's bring up this next set of numbers, where we go back to the middle 1970s, when everybody was very civically minded. We had nearly 70% turnout, but then go to the 2007 election, when there actually was a really important issue at stake, and only about half the people voted, and then 2011, where less than half the people voted. Okay, people have the information they need. Your own numbers say it. People think it's important to vote. Their numbers say it, but they don't. Right. Explain this disconnect.
You know, this is a difficult question, and every electoral administrator across the country is facing similar type of declining voter turnout rates. You know, there has been a great deal of academia study on this, and there's a number of theories. I don't think it's one individual theory, but, you know, there are theories that have been purported that the further we get away from the last Second World War, where, you know, everyone knew somebody that had sacrificed, had made a, you know, terrific sacrifice to ensure that our democracy here in Canada is sustained. If you look at the voting turnout trends, those were when we voted the highest in Canada. Our society has changed dramatically over time. When you and I were kids, we probably ate dinner most times together with our parents, without a TV in the room, very frequently talking about politics with family and family members like that. Societal changes we're seeing as well, where the families don't eat dinner and talk about politics. We don't see the same volunteerism in our communities. Our churches are suffering. Our community association groups are seeing a declining volunteers turnout. You know, that coupled with even enumeration. Back in the day when we used to enumerate people on the list, there would be people who, for a variety of reasons, didn't want to be enumerated. Now we've moved to a permanent register, and I would suggest that our numbers are far more accurate. But thus, we're still seeing a great deal of people who aren't coming to turn out.
Well, because you're a public servant, you're too nice to say that negative political ads are turning people off and that politicians are doing too much. I don't like using the word lying, so let's just say, you know, playing with the truth a little bit during the campaigns. Do you think, in your judgment, that turns people off politics?
I think that the actual turnout is really a shared responsibility. You know, my job as Chief Electoral Officer, our job at Elections Ontario is to ensure every Ontarian knows where to vote, when to vote, how to vote, and what they need to do to vote. It's certainly shared, though, with the political parties, with the party leaders, the parties themselves. They set the platforms, they set the policy issues that they want to campaign on, how they wish to be governed. The local candidates, they provide perspectives on local issues. It's shared with media members such as yourself and the other media members who follow the politics, follow the comings and goings of the party leaders, provide opinion, provide editorials, op-ed pieces, etc. And the ultimate fourth equation to the puzzle is the elector. The elector themselves need to inform themselves on which particular political party, which particular candidate best represents their views and how they wish to see our great province governed.
If you think they're all the same, they're not likely to do that, though, are they?
No, unfortunately, I don't think that they're all going to equally pull that weight.
Right. Let's. This election's happening in the second week of June, and as we know, there are probably most of the colleges and universities in this province have broken for the year at that point.
Right.
Who, as a result of those students not being in those places where those post-secondary institutions are, have you been able to determine which parties and or candidates are most adversely affected by that?
We don't necessarily look at, you know, from a party perspective, which candidates or parties might be adversely affected. Our role is really to engage that demographic group that has been challenging for us to get out to vote. In the 2011 election, we were on 49 of the 50 campuses, college and university campuses across the province. This year, because of the fact that the election is in June and most of the schools have left for the year, what we've done is now we're taking those same outreach initiatives, our Pledge to Vote campaign, we're taking them to areas where the students are. We're going to festivals, we're going to malls, we're going to cinemas across the province with our campaign and our outreach activities to try and engage those youth to get themselves onto the voters list, to ensure that they understand their rights to vote and ultimately to be engaged in the democratic process come June 12th. That
doesn't look like it's for post-secondary kids, but what have you got there?
Well, this is a program that we developed in conjunction with Elections Canada. It's called Voting Rules. It's for grade 5 and grade 10 curriculum. It is a lesson-based program that really talks about the importance of democracy.
Let's twist a little more just like that so we can see the cover. There we go. Perfect.
This program we developed back in 2009, 2010.
And it's aimed at grade
5 and grade 10. Okay. And right now, currently, there's over 2,000 teachers in the province of Ontario who are utilizing this. And we're hoping, you know, in a couple of years, once we start to actually do the analytics afterwards, we're hoping to try and engage the youth in these type of programs because we understand that voting is habitual. It is something that once, you know, an individual turns 18, once they begin voting, they will continue to vote. We have other.
You got to get them in the front door.
We got to get them in the front door. We have other programs this election called Student Vote. Taylor Gunn's group. We will be in over 2,000 schools. Hopefully, over 2,500 kids in grade 5 will be voting on June the 12th, similarly to their parents.
If you're blind, if you need a wheelchair, that kind of thing, how hard is it to vote in the province of Ontario?
Well, in 2010, with the changes in Bill 231, there were a great number of reforms directly directed towards accessibility issues. All of our voting locations now are completely accessible. We make remediation efforts to ensure everyone is
They're all wheelchair accessible?
All wheelchair accessible. We put in ramps, we build ramps if we need to. We have every accessible point that we can ensure that those individuals can exercise their right to vote. We also provide in the returning office technology that would allow an individual to completely be able to vote independently. This technology allows them to use a variety of means. There's paddles, there's sip and puff technology, but it allows them to vote a piece of paper ballot completely independently so that they can vote no different than any other Ontarian.
One of the again, in anticipation of your visit, I got a lot of emails again on the issue of if you don't think any of them are any good, what do you do?
Well, certainly under our legislation, there is the ability to decline a ballot. This election, we've put up actually in the polls a voter's Bill of Rights. So in every poll now, a voter will be able to see what their rights are. And under our statute, there is the ability to actually decline a ballot. So someone can come to the deputy returning officer, and when the ballot is issued to them, just indicate that they wish to decline their right to vote. So that is a fundamental part of our democratic institution.
A gadfly by the name of Greg Vezina, I don't know if you know him, but he's been around for a long time. He's run a couple of times too, maybe a few. He's trying to get something called the None of the Above Party put on the ballot. Is that too late?
No, that party has been registered, and I do believe that there are a couple of candidates in various ridings across the province that are running under that party banner.
So if in some strange universe, none of the above actually won a riding, what would happen?
That individual would be elected as an MPP. Because it's not the party, it is the actual individual who gets elected in that particular riding.
So the riding wouldn't be vacant?
The riding wouldn't be vacant.
I think that's their intention. You know,
well, it might be their intention, but that individual who's put their name forward would become the elected MPP.
Okay. And again, one of the criticisms I've heard of Elections Ontario is that you folks don't spend enough time telling people that they have the right to spoil their ballot or decline their ballot or in some way indicate their frustration with the political system by doing that. Do you inform people of that right?
We go to great lengths to inform every Ontarian of all of their rights as an elector. So we want to inform them of where they can vote, when they can vote, how they can vote, and what they need to do to vote. Informing them of how to vote is informing them that there is a channel involved that if they wish to decline their ballot, they absolutely can. It was one of the reasons that we did move to putting, in fact, a voter's rights, Bill of Rights, in every single poll in the province.
So that will be in every single
Absolutely.
Voting booth in the province?
Every single location in the province will have that Bill of Rights.
Huh. Okay. You've heard this question before, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. Is it time to vote online?
You know, I get asked that question a lot.
I know.
I was compelled by the Election Act and the reforms in the Election Act to do a fairly extensive study on internet and telephone voting, which I tabled last June to the legislature. We looked across the country, we looked worldwide at a number of different jurisdictions and their utilization of internet and telephone voting. But fundamentally, we went back to the principles in our statute. At this particular point in time, we've not found a system that meets the security and the integrity of our standards of our electoral system.
Just off the top of my head, I don't know how that possibly can be the case when everybody does all their most intimate, personal, financial banking online, and I think most folks are reasonably happy with the security of that system.
Sure.
How you know, if trillions of dollars are okay to be done online, how can it not be secure enough for voting for the Parliament of Ontario?
So there's a fundamental difference. When you bank online or you do commercial activity online, you want to have that information shared with that institution. So you want them to know who you are, you want to know what that transaction is. The banks and other commercial institutions, and part of our research, we did find this, they refund millions of dollars every month back and forth because of some transgression. The difference in an election is one of the basic principles of our democracy is that the ballot is secret, right? So, in fact, you don't want me to know how you have voted. You want to ensure that I don't have that knowledge. Internet voting doesn't provide that level of security at the present time. And the best example I can give is, you know, at the end of the month, if you have an error in your bank statement, you call up the bank, you go through the process, they refund the money to you. In an election of our sort, I can't go back a month later and indicate that someone else has now
kind of a done deal by then,
exactly, exactly.
Okay. I mean, are you of the view, I must confess, having looked at this, you know, for years and years, I'm unclear in my own head about what the right thing to do is, but, you know, there are those who believe that the least you should do to be a good contributing citizen is get off the couch and go out, go to a polling station and vote. On the other hand, I think of a lot of people these days, particularly as society gets older and people with physical disabilities and, you know, people who are in their 80s or 90s or hundreds, who have a lot of difficulty doing that, and how much more convenient and maybe participation rates would go up if we could figure out a way to do this by phone. Or, I mean, do you see that as a potential solution?
Absolutely. As part of my report, what I indicated to the legislature and to all Ontarians, I did indicate that, you know, we do need to turn our minds towards the day that when technology is sufficiently secure enough that in fact we can utilize technology to a greater means in our electoral system. Our electoral system has been tried and true and has served Ontarians well for a long period of time. When we do our Ipsos Reid surveys and survey Ontarians after every election, we ask them what is their confidence in the integrity of the electoral process. And the numbers are off the charts high. You know, 99% believe in that, the integrity aspect of our elections. The challenge for myself and the challenge for Elections Ontario is to begin that modernization process while never being able to diminish the importance of those very basic principles of our democracy, the integrity, the transparency, the secrecy of the vote, one vote per voter. But I do believe we do need to modernize. And you'll see, I think, in the next coming years, as we begin to build a new modern next generation election, we will invoke technology in a wide array of different aspects of the election to in fact make it fundamentally easier for folks to vote. You
know the expression garbage in, garbage out, and I want to finish on this because everybody is distressed. For those who care, the low turnout is very distressing.
Sure.
You probably take it very personally when 48% of the people show up to vote. What I want to know is how accurate is the information that goes into the system that allows us to conclude coming out that only 48% of the people vote. And by that I mean this. If you've got a home in, let's say, Hamilton, Ontario, and you've got a cottage, let's say, up in Tobermory, and you get a voter registration card to vote in both places, but you're only voting in Hamilton, you're not going to be at the cottage yet on June 12th. You did vote, but does that look like a 50% turnout to Elections Ontario because in one place you didn't vote, but in one place you did? You know what I'm saying?
I completely understand. One of the challenges that we all have with our permanent registers, whether it's us, Elections Canada, any of the jurisdictions, is the accuracy of that information. Our statistics show that Ontarians move somewhere between 17 to 19% in any given year. So there's a constant influx of information. We get data from a wide variety of sources. We get it from Elections Canada, we get it from our MTO partners, we get it from the Ontario Registrar General, and we're constantly trying to ensure that, to your point, that we have Steve Paikin only at his primary residence so that we do have accurate information. But because elections happen over a in this case, 35-day calendar, that snapshot in time when we actually cut the data, there is always going to be a little bit of discrepancy between that and come election day.
A little bit or a lot?
I would say a little bit.
You'd say a little?
Yeah.
But the 48, 49% who turned out last time, how accurate really do you think that number was?
Well, I'm quite accurate that we knew that the 4.4 million people who had come to vote, and I'm quite confident that our voters list, you know, there are areas that certainly we can improve upon, but for the most part, it is quite accurate.
Okay. Well, good luck on the 12th of June.
Thank you very much.
That's Greg Essensa, Ontario's Chief Electoral Officer. Thanks for dropping into TVO tonight.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.